All right, bring in everybody because for the second hour, this man has gone viral not once but twice. First of all, for calling out Ben Shapiro for his hypocrisy, and then second of all, doing an outstanding interview with Brianna Joy Gray on her podcast, Bad Faith Podcast. Give it up for good friend of the show, returning back here, Jose Vega. What's going on, buddy?
Howdy, how you doing?
Hey, man, it's really good to have you back on because, man, something just happened that caught my attention, and I think we need to break it down. The Democrat Party approval falls to a record low. What's it like smiling knowing the DNC's falling apart? Because I know you recently had a great conversation with Brianna Joy Gray. So before we play this video, take it away, Jose.
Yeah, well, the conversation I had with Brianna was very insightful, interesting. Well, first of all, it made me realize how much I don't know, which is always a good thing. You know, you should always be learning something. And to be able
Absolutely.
to sit down with her with like she is brilliant and just like, you know, she goes like bam, bam, bam. So, you know, I really had to keep up there. But on the points about the Democratic Party, she was breaking down the Build Back Better. And this is at a point in my sort of internal political career where like I didn't care what the Democratic Party or the Republicans were trying to do, right? At that point, Biden is president and I've given up all hope on the two-party system. So I wasn't even really following Build Back Better as much as maybe I could have been. And you know, the Corey Bush and Jamal Bowman, they released this podcast together where they're going through like all the gripes of dealing with the minutia of the Democratic Party. And I realize that these guys are cowards because they're out here spilling the beans on this podcast about how Biden was against them, against the progressive caucus members of the Congress. Meanwhile, you know, Biden is saying, oh, we want both parts of Build Back Better. We want the social infrastructure for, you know, the American people, not just a hard infrastructure. But the moment Joe Manchin goes on TV and says this bill is not going to pass, is only going to pass over my dead body, it's and then Biden comes back and he calls the progressive members to say to them like, yeah, you're going to have to just not rock the boat on this one and go with what you know, not vote on the human infrastructure part of this. But the fact that they're coming out and saying this now, the fact that they're coming out now that they're out of power, now that they're not in the Congress, now that they don't have any consequence really for, you know, speaking out against the Democratic Party, is when they decide to speak out. You know, how could things be different if they had actually spoken up about the Democratic Party and the way the party was coming after them? You know, I mean, that's what I thought AOC was going to do, you know, that she was going to not take the BS from the party and, you know, rock the boat basically and actually start something new or start something different. So it doesn't surprise me now that I know that this report from the CNN poll lately that the Democratic Party now only has like a 30% or a 29% approval rating. It's like a super all-time low. Yeah, it's not surprising at all because this is something that people have been saying about the Democratic Party for a long time. And we knew that even before Kamala Harris ran and when they were running Joe Biden. So, yeah. Those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, and of course, we also have to address the fact that when the Democrats recently had their big failure, especially when Chucky Boy Schumer caved in, especially when it came down for the continuing resolution, it's very clear that they don't have that dog in them, that fight. And I want to pull up this video here. This was recently played on CNN. It has been going viral because all the approval rating for the Democrats has disappeared. So let's go ahead and play this video in its full entirety, shall we? Let's do it.
Good morning. Welcome Inside Politics Sunday. I'm Manu Raj.
I understand the volume's a little low, so I will be raising it up. So I'll play in its full entirety, and then we'll break it down.
Okay.
Welcome Inside Politics Sunday. I'm Manu Raj. First up this morning, a brand new exclusive CNN poll that paints a brutal reality for Democrats as they struggle to mount a unified opposition to President Trump. Americans' favorable views of the Democratic Party's brand are at a record low, just 29%. That's compared to 36% for Republicans. It is the lowest ever recorded for Democrats in CNN polling going back more than 30 years. As you can see, the party's numbers dropping a staggering 20 points in just 4 years. The CNN SRSR's poll also found 57% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning voters are more interested in seeing their party leaders stop the GOP agenda, compared to 42% who are more interested in cutting bipartisan deals. It is a big shift from where the party stood at the start of Trump's first term in 2017. Now, the survey was taken before this week's tumultuous battle over funding the government, which resulted in one of the ugliest intra-party Democratic disputes in years, and left many in the party lobbying furious attacks at Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, who ultimately reversed course and let a GOP bill funding the government become law in order to avert a shutdown. Now, a bitter round of finger pointing is taking shape after Democrats failed to get a single concession from the GOP, despite having their first piece of leverage to fight back against Trump. Now, the big question: where does a party in deepening turmoil and in open warfare go from here?
Where does it go? It goes nowhere, because the Democrats for a long time told us that we have to keep our powder dry, that we have to be quiet, that we have to be obedient, that we have to follow the orders and just listen to them and trust them. And how's that worked out for us? It leads to this situation of low approval ratings, abysmal records, and already look, so many people are talking about this in the media. Look, the Democrats' party's favorability rating among American public has hit a record new low. This hasn't been done since 1992. So the poll commissioned by the broadcaster was conducted by SSRS from March 6th to the 9th, sampling the opinions of 1,206 respondents. It suggested that the approval rating of the party stands just 29%, a record low in regular CNN polling carried out since 1992. The Republican Party fared better with a 36% rating, according to the poll. What that tells me is that nobody trusts anybody in Congress. Jose, take it away, my friend.
Well, look, I think first of all, we should be careful because they're going to try and do a comeback. That's what this is.
Yeah.
They're setting up for a Democrat Party comeback. And I see it already. I know Hassan Abi, he put out a tweet saying, you know, hey, we should get the best of us and we should really look to reform our party or start something new. But the or start something new thing is only being tagged on there as a way to appease the people who are looking for a viable third party or an independent movement, so that they can then feel comfortable with discussing the idea of, well, maybe instead of trying to start from scratch and build up infrastructure with an independent movement, we go to the Democratic Party and we just, reform things from the inside out, because now we have the leverage, given that Chuck Schumer, just did this thing where they're working with the GOP to avert a government shutdown. We have the leverage now where we can really negotiate with the Democratic Party and say, no, you have to be more progressive in order to get the support back. That's the narrative that's about to be spread and shared.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell people, watch out for it, because it is not a convincing argument. Because every single time that the Democratic Party has tried to have a real progressive run, like Bernie Sanders in 2016, the worst corporate elements of the Democratic Party have come out to snuff them out. Hillary Clinton coordinated with the DNC to make sure that Bernie Sanders could not get the primary, become the primary, the president, the Democratic primary challenger to the GOP challenger in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then we saw this recently with Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, of course, where the AIPAC, but it wasn't just AIPAC, it was the Democratic Party. I mean, like I told Brianna Joy Gray, I was on the ground in his district, and I saw that all the Democrat clubs, because that's also how they maintain power, and this is just for something that for people don't know, there are Democrat clubs. Republicans also have this too in their strongholds, right? But like, there are Democrat Party clubs where they are like headquarters and centers, basically. Like, there's two here in the Bronx. Actually, no, there's three here in the Bronx, and there was a new one that was recently formed, which I crashed. Although I never posted the video to that intervention, but I think I will, but with like some added context just to make it make sense. Because
absolutely, you should work
because
on that.
It was the one where it was like 2 or 3 weeks before the election, and this club that considers itself more progressive, anti-Richie Torres, they were having a town hall where they invited some like DNC chief strategist who worked on the Obama campaign and the Biden campaign, and on the Kamala Harris campaign, to like why we should bus people from New York to Philly. But she walked in and she had what I called Illuminati boots. Well, Morgan actually called it Illuminati boots, but like, she had boots with eyes on the lips of him, like the top part of the boot, like they had eyes on them, so when they were together, they were looking at you, and she was like decked out and blinged out, and she was just like talking a mile a minute about how Pennsylvania is going to be a tough state to win, so we're going to need to buzz people in. And the intervention I did was I raised my hand. I asked the question, so how do I talk to a voter who is concerned about the fact that Kamala Harris is going to continue to send weapons and arms to Israel? And then just like the room, it was like a gunfight or something. Like the entire room just turned toxic at me, even though in the beginning when like we were supposed to introduce ourselves, I was like, my name's Jose Vega, I'm an independent running against Richie Torres, and they were clapping like, yay, we hate Richie Torres, you know. But what was so interesting about that day was afterwards, after we got kicked out, I spoke with one of their younger people at the club who said like they do their who's getting trolled next, you'll find out soon. One of their younger people came out to talk to me, and he's like, look, I'm with you all the way, you know. Yes, the genocide sucks, and the fact that she has Liz Cheney, who, you know, her father never found a war he didn't like, you know. And I was like, okay, well, if you know all this, why are you sheepdogging for Kamala Harris? And he's like, because there's nothing else. There's nothing else, you know.
No,
and so it was more tragic than it was, you know, upsetting, because I realized there too. So like that experience, and also like going on the podcast with Brianna, I'm realizing like, yeah, the Democratic Party really is fucked. There's nothing redeeming about them left. So instead of talking about reforming the party, which you're going to hear a lot of very soon, that's why you're hearing this whole thing about, oh, AOC should primary Chuck Schumer. I don't care. And I'm going to reiterate this again, because I think Jamal Bowman, who's been making his rounds, he did the Jewish Voice for Peace rally here in New York. AOC is and then he has this podcast with Cori Bush, and he's doing the rounds on alternative media. I know what they're doing. They're grooming him to run again. Are they going to make him run against George Latimer? I don't think so. He's not going to go back to his old district. They're going to try and primary him here in the Bronx against Richie Torres. That's how the progressive Democratic wing is going to try and sheepdog people back to the Democratic Party, by having them go rally behind Jamal Bowman. And I am here to say, do not fall for it. I do not care. I am not going to support Jamal Bowman in his primary. It's not even guaranteed that he would win against Richie Torres, not even because I don't think he would be better than Richie Torres. Anything would be better than that pile of shit named Richie Torres. The reason I don't think Jamal Bowman would win is for the same reason he lost the first time, because the Democratic Party is so controlled, corporately controlled. And this part of the Bronx, this district that I'm in, I've done the homework. I know who votes here and who doesn't vote here. And the people who vote here are the people up in Riverdale, who are not only sympathetic to Israel, they raise money for the IDF soldiers. That's right. The northwest part of the Bronx, right? Not the poor part, not the South Bronx, the northwest part of the Bronx, which is called Riverdale, raises money for the IDF soldiers. They bring Yoav Gallant to this district, okay? And it is one of the richest areas of the Bronx, and it has the highest voter turnout. Whereas people who were supporting me in the South Bronx, they don't vote. And look, you know, I think people should vote, you know, if they want to see me in power, but that's where I had most of my support. And so part of what we're going to have to do in the next year and a half is get people registered to vote, and make sure that they register as unaffiliated, so that they don't have a party, so that they're not Democrats and Republicans, you know, so that they can actually think for themselves. So anyway, my main point is, Jamal Bowman, if you decide to enter this race, you are like entering the lion's den, because if by some miracle you do pinch the win against, you will face nothing harder than me. And I promise you that I will drag you through the mud, because you've proven once that you are ineffective as a congressman, and you have no business being anywhere near there. And I'm going to tell this to the GOP too. You know,
okay,
like,
all right.
I'm going to tell this to the Republicans too. Like, you know, you have no business being in the Bronx. You're not going to win here. Not because I don't think people are fed up with the Democratic Party, but you're not the answer either. The Republican Party is not the answer to being anti-Democratic Party. It's not. So whether you're Jamal Bowman or whether you're the future Republican challenger, you're going to have to get through me. And I'm not going to make it easy. So
then you know what? I dropped this gauntlet. Jamal Bowman, if you want to debate Jose Vega, make it happen. More than happy to moderate the debate. And I think that's a good note to end it on.